Yeah, and I think tolerance and sympathy is all fine and well insofar as it's with people that are willing to learn and willing to change.
So today we're going to look at the root who the Muslims actually worship. So many people support them, but they don't know what is actually behind the religion of peace.
Yes.
And in the West, although you can't really call South Africa the West, but we're very Western, particularly the white people, got the mindset of the West a bit. That we actually don't find out what is the actual source of what we follow. And I think it is time that we really opened up to have a look. I have always had a bit of a problem. I never knew much, but I know a few people that have got Muslim family members and that. And I'm not saying every single Muslim happens to be radical. But we need to just learn more and find out more.
And I think it's also, again, it's not saying that every Muslim is knowingly doing this. Because I think like a lot of Islam is about, hiding the truth,
Yes.
unfortunately. So I think even from their own people, they simply don't really know the truth of the matter. And it's good to inform people about this.
Yeah. Okay. So we're going to be doing a reaction?
Yeah, we're going to
Can
be
you actually
reacting
call it
to,
that?
yeah, well, it is basically a reaction to
Okay.
this video.
As you can see, the title is quite controversial. The Muslims are going to be upset. And I'm going to qualify. I am not saying Muslims knowingly worship the false god Baal. If you're familiar with the Old Testament, you will note that the main competitor for the worship and allegiance of the Israelites was the false god Baal. All throughout the Old Testament, you'll find God chastening, disciplining, rebuking, punishing, even exiling his people for their habitual habit of turning to the false god Baal. That's all throughout the Old Testament. The name Baal also pops up in the New Testament under the name Beelzebub. If you read Mark 3:22 all the way 30, the Jews accused Jesus of casting out demons by Beelzebub, the prince of demons. Beelzebub, Beelzebub, or Beelzebul. Baal, that's the word Baal. Zebul means Lord of the flies, Lord of the house. In fact, Baal is simply Satan's disguise. Because if you go with what the Jews said in Mark 3, Beelzebub is the prince of demons. But the prince of demons would be Satan. So here, if the Jews are right and Jesus didn't correct them, that means Beelzebub, Baal, is simply another name of Satan. Because there's only one ruler of demons, Satan. He rules the kingdom of darkness. All evil spirits are subject to him. If that's true, then that means if I establish tonight by the sources, Muslim sources and non-Muslim sources, if I establish Allah is simply another form, another name for Baal, and Islam is simply another form of Baal worship, then that actually further confirms Islam is the religion of the devil. It's Satan's religion that Satan inspired through Muhammad to be the competitor against Judaism and Christianity. And that would make sense, right? Because all throughout Old Testament history, the chief competitor to Yahweh, Yahovah, was Baal. Right now, as we speak, the chief competitor is Islam. You understand why it's important? So here are the three facts I want to establish. Facts that either the sources themselves come out and say, or facts that are derived from what these sources are saying. Okay, here are the three facts. And this is all in my articles. Fact number one, Hubal was the chief deity, the chief god of Mecca and of the shrine, the Kaaba. That's the first fact. Fact number two, Hubal was actually Baal. Hubal, and the Muslim sources will testify, was actually the Arabic name for Baal. That's the second fact. The third fact, the sources don't come out and say it, but that's the logical, necessary inference. Hubal was Allah, Allah was Hubal. If you actually read, quote unquote, between the lines, you're going to see Hubal was Allah, Allah was Hubal. So are you now ready to dig in? Okay, ready? Make sure you click on those links to the articles and save them. One thing I want to share. I want to give you a little background on the pagan religion in Mecca. Mecca, according to the Muslim sources, is the place where Muhammad was born. He belonged to the Quraysh tribe. And according to the Muslim sources, the Meccans were into astral worship. The Arabs, before Muhammad and during the time Muhammad, were into astral worship, where they worshiped the sun and moon and 5 planets because they thought there were only 5 planets. Now, in many cultures, the sun was the male deity and the moon was the female deity. Not in Arabia. The moon was the male deity and the sun was the female deity. And the sun was the consort, the wife of the moon. If I'm not confusing you, let me just read what Abdullah Yusuf Ali says. I can't read all of it. This is a Muslim whose Quran translation was widely circulated and distributed in the 20th century. It will be noticed that the sun and the moon and the 5 planets, God identified, each with a living deity, god or goddess, with characteristics and qualities of its own. Did you catch what he just said? The Arabs in Mecca worship the sun and moon and 5 planets as 7 gods and goddesses. You're going to see the relevance in a minute. Now let me read the rest of it. Let me skip and let me get to the relevant part. He goes, and the Arabic word for the moon, Qamar, is of the masculine gender. And on the other hand, the Arabic word for the sun, Shams, is of the feminine gender. The pagan Arabs evidently looked upon the sun as a goddess and the moon as a god. So the Arabs in Mecca, they viewed the moon as the male god and the sun as the female god, or the goddess. That's going to be important. The moon is the male deity. Okay. Because it's the planet associated with the chief god of the pantheon, the chief god worshipped by the Arab pagans and a host of gods and goddesses. And the chief god is male. So the moon, that's a masculine now. So it's associated with the male deity who's the chief. But hold on. The chief deity is supposed to be Allah. That means you just established that for the pagans, Allah was the moon god. Oh my goodness. You with me there? And the sources I'm going to quote will say Hubal was the chief god and Hubal was the moon god. And Hubal is actually the idol Baal. And I'm now going to show it to you. Let's begin. Okay, this comes from Gods, Goddesses, and Mythology. Volume 11, page 137. Hubal, chief god of the Kaaba, a martial and oracular deity, a moon god. What was Hubal? A moon god. Oh my goodness. Are you seeing it? Okay, let's read another one. A pre-Islamic deity represented by an idol in Kaaba that was destroyed by Muhammad when he conquered Mecca in 630. Patron of the Quraysh. Remember, Muhammad's tribe is the Quraysh tribe. So who was the chief god of the Quraysh? Hubal. What tribe was Muhammad born from? Quraysh. So who was the chief god of Muhammad's family, of Muhammad's tribe, of Muhammad? Hubal. Who is Hubal? Baal. Muhammad was born in Baal worship. Let me read some more. It's all in the article. This comes from Cyril Glasse, and this comes from the New Encyclopedia of Islam. Hubal, an idol, the god of the moon. Centuries before Islam, pay attention to this name. Centuries before Islam, Amr ibn Luhay, a chief of the tribe of Jurhum who dwelt in Mecca, before the coming of the Quraysh tribe, brought the idol to the city from Syria. Wow. We're going to revisit that. But let me finish it. It was set up in the Kaaba and became the principal idol of the pagan Meccans. Folks, do you understand the implication of what we just read? Hubal was an idol from Syria. The chief god in Syria among the pagans was Baal. Baal. Baal was the god that was worshipped by the Syrians before the time of Muhammad. If this Arab, Amr, brought the idol from Syria, what was he bringing to the Kaaba? The idol of Baal, Baal. So he brought the idol Baal from Syria, and that's why it's called Hubal. And notice Hubal became the chief god of the Kaaba of Mecca. So you understand what the sources just admit? Hubal is the god of the moon. He's the moon god. Hubal was the god of the Kaaba, the god of Mecca, the chief god. Hubal was the idol from Syria. These three facts are admitted explicitly by the sources. So now let's break it down. If Hubal is from Syria and the chief god worshipped in Syria is Baal, we just established Hubal is Baal. That means Baal was the chief god of Mecca, the chief god of the Kaaba, and Baal was then seen to be the moon god, the god of the moon. You with me there? Here's another one. Khuza'a thus shared the guilt of Jurhum. They're also to blame in other respects. Now, here's what's beautiful. A chieftain of theirs, on his way back from a journey to Syria, coming back from Syria, asked the Moabites, oh my goodness, the Moabites to give him one of their idols. They gave him Hubal, which he brought back to the sanctuary, setting it up within the Kaaba, and it became the chief idol of Mecca. Who gave him the idol? The Moabites. Who are the Moabites? The descendants of Lot. The Moabites in Syria, whom the Old Testament says, worship Baal. This is a Muslim admitting this. Oh my goodness. Are you catching it? Let's read some other sources. This comes from John Mulson Arnold. Notice what he says here. The name Hubal remains a mystery. The opinion that it is synonymous with the Babylonian and Syrian Baal or Bel is supported by the testimony of the Arab authorities. Oh my goodness. Are you guys getting blown away here? Folks, you're reading it for yourselves. What more evidence do you need that the pagan Arabs were Baal worshippers? Baal was their chief god, the god of the Kaaba. But the Muslims tell me the Kaaba was built for Allah. Wait, if the Kaaba is Baal's shrine and the Kaaba is Allah's shrine, and you can't have more than one god of the shrine, that means Baal is Allah, Allah is Baal. Let me repeat that again. Here is Satan's mastermind. He disassociated Allah from Hubal through Muhammad, and the connection with Hubal was lost in order to deceive people into thinking Allah is the God of Abraham and not simply the name of Baal. Because Satan worked through Muhammad as his prophet to dissociate Hubal from Allah, making it seem they're not the same in order to deceive 1.7 billion people from not realizing they're worshiping Baal under the guise of Islam. That's the satanic mastermind. Because if he still called them Hubal, hold on, Hubal was the idol of the Moabites that was imported from Jordan and Syria. And their idol was Baal. Are you saying Allah is Baal, the false god, the competitor to Jehovah? Another name of Satan? You see the mastermind? You see the brilliance of Satan in raising up Muhammad, his son, the son of Satan, who's now crushed under the feet of Jesus?
Yeah, and we are really in a major spiritual war. And we don't realize it.
And it's been carrying on for thousands of years.
Yeah. And it started long, long before, Muhammad.
Yeah. Yeah. And that does seem like, if you look at just the Old Testament, it does seem that Satan's MO is always to disguise himself under another name.
Yes.
He always has this thing of, he never will outright say that he is Satan or whatever the case may be. It's always setting up another deity, setting up another god, in inverted commas, instead of the one true God, Yahweh.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's a lot of similarities with Baal worship and Islam as well. Child sacrifice was a big
huge
thing in Baal worship, and you can definitely see that in this almost a desire to perform jihad, this desire to give your life, and
Yeah, this whole submission and fear,
yeah,
and to hold you in that fear and chains, and you're not allowed to question,
yeah,
which I find that, yeah, because everything I hear, I actually wonder about it, because so many things don't make sense. And you actually sacrifice your children to get that favor, which is
yes,
so
yeah,
sick.
that is definitely part of Islam.
Yeah.
Yeah, you sacrifice your children so that you can get the rewards when you go to
Paradise.
So it's, once again, it is and you see that in the Bible when it refers to Satan, it is that pride, it is that self-centeredness, that you're sacrificing your child not for the betterment of the child, but it's really it's a self-serving sacrifice.
Yeah.
And also, you know, if God is love, which he is, you see in Islam, as you said now, you know, it's based on fear. So fear is the exact opposite of what love is.
Yeah.
So it would make sense that it is operated by Satan.
Yeah. And the Jews are known as the Saturday people, and the Christians are known as the Sunday people. And I'm just wondering if they don't start one of their holy wars on a Sunday. You know.
Well, yeah, like in reference to Saturday, October the 7th.
Yes, yes.
The attacks that happened on October the 7th, the fact that fell on a Saturday, you know, it does seem to me that more and more Islam is encroaching in now to Western lands. And Western lands are being overrun by Islam ideology. And you've got people that were brought up in Western lands sympathizing with something a couple of centuries ago our forebears were fighting against.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, religion, when you put diametrically opposed religions together, there is no safe space. People throughout history have been waging this war because Christians and Muslims knew in the past that they can't really live together.
Yeah.
And again,
It's impossible.
you know, you have to qualify this. Once again, not all Muslims know this.
No, definitely not.
There's, you know, in as much as there's, I would assume, quite a few Christians that just claim the name of Jesus Christ, but they don't really know much about the Christian faith.
Yeah, because I cannot see, and I might be wrong, and I'm sure that somebody will say something, but, and I don't want to sound too harsh, but it's like, where do you draw the line between being a Christian and being on the left?
Mm.
You are wanting to be good, to look good, but at what cost?
Yeah, and I think it's just, it's that bend towards sympathy in the West that I think is becoming more and more dangerous to the West, because you're sympathizing with something that you don't understand, and you don't have an understanding of what history is. So you're sympathizing with something that, once again, back in the day was not a good thing. And you've got the mentality of, no, but we've advanced from that.
Well, you maybe, but not them.
Not every... the Enlightenment was only a Western thing. The Age of Enlightenment only came to the West. It didn't come to all nations and all tongues.
Well said.
It was just a Western thing, and Western people have adopted it. And unfortunately, with the Enlightenment came the abandoning of God, the abandoning of the supernatural realm, the abandoning of, there's someone over you that's greater than you. When you set yourself up to be God, you answer to nobody but yourself.
Yes. And that's where I think we've really fallen very short. And we've actually handed over so much for the sake of looking civilized, looking good, looking kind, and just loving.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think tolerance and sympathy is all fine and well insofar as it's with people that are willing to learn and willing to change, and are willing to assimilate to the culture that you're around. Tolerance and compassion for people that knowingly don't care and knowingly have no desire to change.
And knowingly and willingly to actually sacrifice their own children for the sake of their so-called God is totally uncivilized.
Yeah. And again, it's definitely not saying it's all Muslims.
No.
But the Bible never does give us a license to go ahead and perform holy war. Within the Quran, you're allowed to. In fact, it's mandated that you do that. Just because you as a good Muslim choose not to do it, it doesn't make your religion right. It just means that you're a more moral person than your religion teaches you to be.
Yeah, and I'm just sitting there thinking, how can a war be holy? Like there is, you are willingly going out and actually murdering people. There is famine soon after, and that. And yet on the other side, in the Old Testament, God, said, wipe out certain nations around you because they were actually doing terrible things. And they were actually misleading the Jews, you know, with their so-called idols and that,
Yeah. Yeah.
and of course child sacrifices and that, and like, I have seen so many Muslims taking those things and saying, but look here, look here.
Yeah, and that's simply because, you know, the all the atrocities, quote unquote atrocities that are done in the Bible get so superimposed, but nobody ever understands why they were done.
Yes.
They were done for specific reasons because the instigators were always the ones that were stealing the people from God. They were stealing the babies, for instance, with the sacrifices. They were polluting life.
Yeah, with the like so-called worships and
Yeah.
false gods, idols and that. And we need to actually know about that, but okay, the why.
Yeah.
And I honestly think it's time for a new crusade. Because it's actually becoming at the stage where you just see so many Muslims all over, and they just need a phone call, a message, and they will just rise up.
Yeah. And I mean, they've said in so many words on social media as well, you know, they will take over Western culture.
Even though they love wearing jeans and
Yeah, all the Western trappings they
and the
enjoy,
food
but
and that, you know, which I find quite funny, but it's not funny. It's actually it's rather.
So the radicals will
to think about.
adopt the aesthetics of Western culture, but they will not adopt the mindset of Western culture. And that's where, once again, the danger is.
Yeah, and I can't understand our leaders that just welcome them in to wherever we are, and they really don't care.